I never thought a simple piece of paper could change everything. I held the worn envelope in my shaking hands, my heart pounding so loud I could almost hear it in my ears. My world felt like it was spinning out of control. If you want to hear what happens next, give this video a like and drop a comment. Don't subscribe yet. More twists are coming in this revenge story. Megan Walker is 34 years old. She has spent nearly her whole adult life helping her parents. She thought they'd always be a team. She never saw betrayal coming. The first time I helped my parents was when I was a teenager. Dad's car broke down on a cold winter night, and Mom didn't have enough in her purse to call a tow truck. I dug into my savings from babysitting and paid for the tow. Dad hugged me tight, and I felt proud. At 22, I left college with a heavy loan but found a steady job as a nurse. I lived in Timberlake Meadows, a quiet neighborhood with tall pines and creaky porches. I called home every week, and I always made sure Mom and Dad had enough to pay their bills. When their heater died one December, I wired them $1,600 the same day. When their furnace broke again 2 years later, I sent them $2,000 without a second thought. My younger brother, Michael, moved out at 18 and never looked back. He got a job in another state with good pay. He bought a shiny truck and spent his time with new friends. He only called when he needed something, like a loan to buy a motorcycle or to help him fix a leak in his apartment. I paid for his rent twice and I never minded. Then, 2 months ago, Dad fell ill. He was diagnosed with a heart problem that needed surgery. I arranged the operation and covered all the co-pays and extra tests. I spent nights in the waiting room, clutching a cup of cold coffee and praying. When Dad finally came out of surgery, bruised and groggy, he smiled at me and said I was his hero. Mom's health wasn't great either. She had a bad knee that made walking hard, so I made sure someone came every week to help clean the house. I paid for that service too, even though it cost me $300 each visit. Every time I saw Mom smile and move more freely, I felt worth it. All this time, I never asked for help. My car needed new brakes last month, and I fixed them myself. My apartment got a leaky roof in the spring, and I spent weekends patching it. I didn't say anything when rent went up or when I was too tired to cook. I just kept going, but something told me I should double-check their will. I remembered Dad muttering late one night about changing things. I asked Mom, and she said everything would stay the same. I believed her. Yesterday, I had a free afternoon, so I drove to their lawyer's office in Timberlake Heights. The building was old, with peeling paint and cracked steps. Inside, the air smelled of coffee and paper. The receptionist pointed me down a long hallway to Mr. Harris's door. His nameplate was shiny and new. I knocked. He looked up from a stack of files, his glasses sliding down his nose. He invited me in. His office had leather chairs and dark wooden shelves filled with thick law books. On his desk lay a single envelope addressed to me. He cleared his throat. "Megan, your parents asked me to give you this. It's their final will." My stomach twisted. I sat down, and he slid the envelope across the desk. My fingers trembled. "Open it when you're ready," he said quietly, then excused himself. I watched him leave, the door clicking shut. I stared at the envelope for a long moment. My chest felt tight. My hands felt too big to open something so small and important. I tore the seal and pulled out the pages. My eyes scanned the words, but my mind couldn't make sense of them. Then I reached the part that said, "All property, savings, and assets of Mary Walker and John Walker shall be left to their son, Michael Walker." Every word felt like a punch. Left to Michael, not to me. Everything, the house in Timberlake Meadows, the savings account with nearly $200,000, the little cabin by the lake, none of it would go to me. Not one penny. I stared at the paper. My vision blurred. The world in that office spun faster and faster. How could they do this? After everything I'd done for them? All those hundreds of visits, all those payments, all those nights praying over them in hospitals. I sank deeper into the chair, clutching the will. My head pounded as I struggled to breathe. My life flashed before my eyes, the baby I held in my arms, the college years, the late nights in waiting rooms. Every memory seemed to scream that I deserved a place in their plans. Every memory felt like a lie. I stood up, the paper shaking in my fist. I backed away from the desk, my heart racing. I walked out of the office without a word. In the hallway, I bumped into the receptionist. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. I shook my head and kept walking. Outside, the sun was bright and cold. The wind tossed my hair against my face. I put the will in my coat pocket and got into my car. I didn't turn on the engine. I sat there, staring at the steering wheel, my mind racing. Anger rose in my chest, cold and fierce. How dare they choose him over me after all these years? How dare they reward someone who barely looked back? How dare they leave me with nothing? In that moment, I made a decision. If they wanted to keep everything from me, then I would stop giving. No more bills paid. No more help with doctor visits. No more extra expenses. They could pay for their own coffee. They could find someone else to fix their heater. I took a deep breath and pressed the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life. A sudden horn blared behind me. I jerked, my head whipping around. A delivery van had pulled up close. A man in an orange vest got out and yelled at me for blocking the driveway. I hit the brake and rolled down my window. The delivery man shook his clipboard and pointed. His truck was loaded with boxes of medicine and medical equipment, supplies I had ordered for Mom and Dad's weekly care. My throat tightened. The van's engine idled, waiting. I looked at the stack of boxes leaning against the seat. Inside was everything from pain patches to special bandages Mom needed. I had spent $600 on that order just 2 days ago. I realized in that instant what my choice would cost them. They would scramble. They would call me frantic. They might even go without what they needed. The thought made my chest ache. I rolled up the window and drove away, leaving the van idling. I didn't even apologize. I just drove. As I pulled onto the main road, a figure stepped onto the shoulder, waving her arms. It was Mom. She looked small and helpless in her coat. My heart lurched. I slowed down but did not stop. Mom's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Tears glistened in her eyes. I pressed the accelerator and left her behind. That was the moment I stopped helping. That was when my life tilted on its axis. I didn't know if I had done the right thing, but I knew one thing. Everything had changed forever. Then, a sudden flash of red and blue lights lit up the rearview mirror. A police car was speeding toward me, sirens blaring. My heart leapt into my throat. What had I done? The lights grew brighter, and the wail of the siren filled the car. I gripped the steering wheel. My palms were slick with sweat. I slammed on the brakes. My chest tightened as the police car screeched to a halt behind me. The door of the cruiser swung open, and an officer got out, his face stern. The officer's shoes clicked on the pavement as he approached my car. My hands trembled on the wheel. I rolled down my window, just enough to speak. "License and registration, please," he said, his voice low but firm. I dug through my purse, my heart pounding so loud I could barely hear myself think. I handed them over without looking up. The siren faded a little, but the blue lights still painted the inside of my car in flashes. As he studied my papers, I stared straight ahead, blinking back tears. The guilt of leaving Mom by that van weighed heavy in my chest. My throat felt sore. Finally he spoke. "Ma'am, you were swerving a bit. Everything okay?" I swallowed hard. I'm sorry, officer. I'm upset." His stern expression softened. He handed back my documents. "Take it easy on the road. And next time, try not to block someone's day." I nodded, my voice catching. "Yes, sir. Thank you." He walked back to his cruiser and drove off. The world felt strangely quiet once the siren faded. I sat in my car for a long moment, staring at the empty driveway where Mom had stood. I touched the envelope in my coat pocket as if it burned my skin. I finally started the engine and drove home. Every red light felt like a judge's gavel. When I pulled into the driveway of my small apartment building, I took a deep breath and tried to steady myself. I had ended chapter 1 with an extreme shock. The police stopped, but life had to go on. Now I had to face the less extreme fallout. Inside, my phone buzzed. A text from Dad, help. No more details. My stomach dropped. I called him immediately. Dad, what's wrong? His voice was weak. My chest, it's hurting again. Memories of his surgery flooded back. I gritted my teeth. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I grabbed my jacket and keys and ran back to the car. On the drive to their house in Timberlake Meadows, every bump in the road made me flinch. I rehearsed the questions I'd ask at the hospital, the prayers I'd say. When I arrived, I found Mom on the porch, tears running down her cheeks. She hugged me tight. He's in the living room. I followed her inside. Dad sat slumped on the couch, pale and sweaty, clutching his chest. My heart twisted. I dropped to my knees beside him. Dad, can you breathe? I asked, dialing 911. He nodded but gasped. The operator's voice crackled through the speaker. Paramedics would be there in minutes. I held Dad's hand, stroking his hair. Mom stood behind me, wringing her hands. I felt a surge of anger at myself for stopping their bills. If I hadn't cut them off, maybe they would have upgraded their care team or ordered better supplies. Maybe Dad wouldn't be in this mess. But I had drawn my line. They had drawn theirs. The paramedics arrived, loaded Dad onto a stretcher, and rushed him out. I followed in my car, lights driving like fireflies through the trees. At the hospital, a nurse led me to a waiting room. I sank into a chair and buried my face in my hands. An hour later, a doctor appeared. My heart clenched. He's stable, the doctor said, but he needs monitoring. His heart is under too much stress. I nodded, relief and guilt fighting in my chest. As I sat alone in that quiet hallway, I realized my decision to stop helping had consequences I couldn't ignore. My stomach growled. I hadn't eaten all day. I glanced at the vending machine and considered buying a sandwich with my last dollars. Just then, my phone buzzed again. I opened the text and froze. It was a photo of my parents' house. Smoke curling from the chimney and the front door hanging off its hinges. A caption read, "They're gone." My hand shook. Smoke billowed faster now. I could almost taste the acrid air. I dropped the phone. The room seemed to tilt. I scrambled to my feet and ran toward the door. The sirens faded as I screeched into the driveway of my parents' house. Thick, gray smoke billowed from the roof, curling into the sky like dark fingers. My heart pounded, so hard I thought it would burst. I threw open the car door and ran toward the front steps. Flames licked the eaves, and the heat pressed against my face. Mom! Dad! I screamed, my voice cracking. Firefighters in heavy gear rushed past me, dragging hoses that hissed water onto the burning wood. One of them waved me back. "Ma'am, you can't go in there. Stay back." My legs felt weak, but I pressed forward. I had to know if they were safe. Inside, the living room window glass had shattered and the carpet glowed red. I imagined Mom and Dad trapped inside, scared and calling for help. My throat closed up. A firefighter grabbed my arm gently. "We got them out. They're both alive. They're in the ambulance over there." My lungs filled with relief and guilt all at once. I shook his hand off and ran toward the ambulance. Paramedics wheeled Dad out first, his face pale and sweat-soaked. Mom followed, clutching her knee where she'd fallen when the floorboards gave way. I fell to my knees beside them. Dad opened his eyes and managed a weak smile. "Megan." I grabbed his hands, tears streaming down my face. "I'm here. I'm so sorry. I love you." Mom reached out and touched my cheek. "You came." I looked up at her, my heart aching. I should never have stopped helping. If I had been here, if I had been paying the bills, Dad squeezed my hand. None of this is your fault. The fire started in the basement. I frowned. Why were you in the basement? Mom's eyes filled with shame. We were looking for old photo albums. We wanted to show you the pictures from when you were little. I bit my lip. Memories flashed. Me at 5, covered in chocolate cake. Me at 10, winning my first dance recital. Family trips to the lake cabin. I remembered my parents' happy faces. My heart squeezed. The paramedics loaded them into the ambulance and closed the doors. I climbed in and sat beside Mom. Her knee wobbled when she moved. I held it steady. At the hospital, they wheeled Dad away for scans. Mom and I waited in a small room with stiff chairs and a buzzing fluorescent light. I sat close to her, rubbing her arm. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. I stopped helping, and then this happened. Mom turned to me, her eyes red but kind. "You have every right to be angry. We hurt you by leaving you out of the will. But please don't blame yourself for this fire." I nodded, but I couldn't shake the guilt. I stared at the corner of the room where a dusty, old clock ticked loudly. Each second felt like a reminder of what I'd done. A nurse came in and said Dad was stable, but they needed to keep him overnight for observation. Mom and I shared a small room down the hall. After the nurse left, I pulled out my phone and opened the envelope I'd hidden in my bag. The will stared back at me, the words burning into my mind. Left to Michael. Left to Michael. Left to Michael. My hands shook. I wanted to tear it up, burn it myself, but the paper felt too important. It was the proof of my parents' betrayal. That night, I sat by the bed as Dad slept. I held his hand and watched his chest rise and fall. I remembered all the money I'd sent for his care. I thought of the dinners I skipped so I could buy medicine. I thought of the nights I stayed awake praying for him. And then I thought of Michael, the brother who lived far away, who only called when he needed money, who never once came when Dad was in surgery. I felt a cold anger building in my chest. The next morning, Dad woke to the beep of machines. He smiled when he saw me. "Hey, kiddo." I forced a smile back. "Hey, Dad." Mom came in with coffee and toast. She placed a plate on the table beside Dad's bed. I watched her silently, my mind racing. Later that day, when Dad was resting, I walked down the hall to the hospital lobby. I needed air. Outside, the sun was bright and the wind rustled the trees. I leaned against a brick wall and closed my eyes. Why had they left everything to Michael? Why not me, who had been there through every crisis? My vision blurred with tears. I pressed my hand against the wall, steadying myself. I knew what I had to do next. When I returned to the room, Mom was asleep in a chair and Dad was dozing. I quietly packed my bag. I slipped the envelope with the will inside my coat pocket next to my phone. That afternoon, the doctor said Mom could go home, but Dad needed one more day. I helped Mom into her coat and drove her home, promising I'd pick up Dad tomorrow. Once Mom was safe inside, I got back in the car and stared at the steering wheel. My mind replayed the fire, Dad's surgery, the will. I realized that stopping help had only hurt the people I loved and had given me a new purpose. I would find out why my parents had betrayed me. I would make things right, and I would make them pay in a way they could never forget. As I started the engine, my phone buzzed. A single message from an unknown number. "Your secret's out." Everyone's talking. My heart skipped a beat. I gripped the wheel and stared at the empty road ahead. Then my phone rang. The caller ID read Michael Walker. His name flashed on the screen, and I knew what was coming next. I pressed ignore. But before I could breathe, a car sped past me on the highway, tires screeching, air whooshing. It clipped my bumper and vanished around a bend. My heart lurched. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. I sat in the car for a moment, my heart pounding. The other car that had clipped my bumper was gone. The highway was empty. I stepped out and looked at my car. The bumper was dented, and a piece of plastic trim hung loose. My pulse slowed a little. It was only a scratch. I could fix it later. I got back in and drove home, my mind racing. Why had that car hit me? Was it an accident? Or was someone trying to scare me? I replayed the unknown number message. Your secret's out. Everyone's talking. What secret? Had Michael told people about the will? Had someone else found the envelope in my coat pocket? I felt a chill. When I pulled into my apartment complex, I saw the door to my unit was slightly ajar. My breath caught in my throat. I always locked it before I left. I reached for my phone to call Mom or Dad, but the phone slipped in my hand and fell under the seat. I knelt and grabbed it, my heart beating so loud I thought the neighbors would hear. I stood and pushed the door open. Inside, the living room was a mess. My papers were scattered on the floor. The couch cushions were on the floor. A chair was knocked over. My lamp lay shattered in pieces. Everything felt strange, like someone had rummaged through my life. I stepped inside, my feet crunching on broken glass. I looked around, but there was no one there. I checked my bedroom. Clothes had been pulled out of the closet and tossed on the bed. My wallet was gone. My coat, the one with the will in the pocket, was missing. Panic rushed in. Someone had been here. Someone had taken the will. Someone knew my secret, the one I had kept in my pocket like a hidden knife. I ran back to the living room and grabbed my phone. I called Dad. His voice was calm and warm when he answered. Hey, kiddo. How's everything? Dad, someone broke into my apartment. They took my coat. They took the envelope with the will inside. My voice trembled. Oh no, he said softly. Are you safe? Yeah, I think so. I took a shaky breath. I'm calling the police now. I hung up and dialed 911. The operator's voice was calm and professional. I told her my address and what happened. She said officers would be there soon. I sat on the couch and wrapped my arms around myself. Every sound made me jump. The walls felt too thin. The floor felt too creaky. 10 minutes later, the police arrived. 2 officers came inside, clipboard in hand. They took notes and dusted for fingerprints. They asked me questions. Did I see anyone? Did I hear anything? I shook my head. My mind was blank except for the image of my coat lying on the floor and the missing will. The officers said they would check my building's security cameras. They told me to call if I heard or saw anything else. I thanked them. When they left, I sat alone in the empty, ransacked room. I felt tears burn behind my eyes, but I forced them back. I had to be strong. I spent the rest of the day at a neighbor's apartment. My friend Ally let me stay there until I felt safe enough to go back. She made me hot tea and sat with me while I told her everything. She listened without judgment. She even offered to help me find the coat or search the building. I felt grateful for her kindness. That night, I lay on Ally's couch, but sleep would not come. My mind was full of questions. Who took my coat? Who stole the will? Why did they want it? Was it Michael? Was it someone who wanted to hurt me? I felt a mix of fear and determination. I knew I had to find that will. I had to know why my parents left everything to Michael. I had to protect myself against whoever had broken in. The next morning, I woke early. I drove to the police station to check on the report. They told me the cameras in my building had been offline. They had no leads. I felt anger rise up inside me. They were supposed to protect me. They had failed. As I left the station, I saw Michael's truck parked across the street. My chest tightened. He must have come into town. I had not told him about the break-in. I looked both ways and slipped onto the sidewalk. I walked toward his truck, my heart pounding. I wanted answers. I found him outside a coffee shop, leaning against the hood of his red truck. He looked different. He had a new haircut, and his jacket was bright and clean. He sipped a latte and stared out at the street. He did not notice me at first. Michael, I said softly. He looked up, surprise in his eyes. Megan. He stood and set the latte down. I was just on my way out. I folded my arms. Why are you in town? He shrugged. I was visiting a buddy. Thought I'd stop by and see how Mom and Dad are doing. I flinched at him, calling them Mom and Dad. He had said it so easily. You knew about Dad's surgery? You knew about the fire? He looked guilty. Yeah, I saw it on the news. He ran a hand through his hair. I'm sorry, Megan. I felt anger flare. You saw it on the news? And you didn't call? You didn't come home to help? You left me to deal with everything. He winced. I was stuck out of town. I tried to call, but you didn't answer. Because I was at the hospital. My voice shook. You only call when you want money. You never show up when we need you. He looked down. I know. I'm sorry. I took a step closer. Then why are you here now? And why did someone break into my apartment and steal my coat? Michael's eyes widened. What? Someone stole your coat. Why would someone do that? Don't play dumb, I snapped. You know about the will. You know my coat had the copy in the pocket. No one else knew. Who else would want it? His face turned pale. He shook his head. Megan, I didn't take it. I stared at him, searching his face. His eyes were full of regret. He looked like he wanted to say more, but he stayed silent. I crossed my arms. If you didn't take it, then who did? And why? Michael sighed. I don't know. But I heard some people at work talking about your parents' will. They thought it was odd. Maybe someone told them. I shook my head. But why come here? If you know the will, then why steal the coat? Why let me go through all that terror? He ran a hand over his face. I swear I don't know. I came here to help. I came to find out why they left me everything. I wanted answers too. I looked at him, my anger mingling with guilt. I wanted to believe him, but I had been burned. I had lost the only protection I had, that paper. And now someone had it. Someone was using it to threaten me. Suddenly my phone buzzed. I looked at the screen. It was an email notification. I opened it with trembling fingers. The subject line read, "Read before you try anything stupid." I clicked. The message was from an email address I did not recognize. It said, "We have the original will. We know what's inside. If you want to see it again, come alone to the old mill at dusk, or we will send it to Michael's workplace and to the local news." My blood ran cold. The old mill was outside town by the river. It was abandoned and falling apart. No one went there after dark. Everyone said it was haunted. But these people had plans for me. They wanted me to come alone. They had my parents' secret. I looked at Michael. He saw my face and knew something was wrong. "Who sent that?" he asked. I shook my head. I don't know. But they have the will. They want me to meet them at the old mill tonight. Alone. Michael's eyes widened. You can't go alone. It's dangerous. I hugged myself. But they said so. And if I don't, they'll send it to everyone. Everyone will know I stopped helping. Everyone will know my parents cut me out. I can't let that happen. He reached out and grabbed my arm. I'll go with you. I looked at him, tears in my eyes. No, they said alone. If you come, they might hurt you. He pulled me into a hug. I don't care. I'm not letting you face this by yourself. I pressed back. They'll kill you, or they'll take you instead. He shook his head. I'd rather risk it than let you go alone. I closed my eyes and leaned into him. His arms were strong. I felt safe for a moment, but the email was still open on my phone. The words glowed on the screen. Old mill, dusk alone. I realized there was no turning back. I had to face whoever was behind this. I had to get back the will. I had to save my family's secret. And I had to protect Michael from the danger he walked into. The sun was setting by the time I got into my car. The sky was painted in orange and pink. The old mill sat on a hill by the river, its broken windows dark and empty. I parked on the road and sat in silence, my heart pounding. Michael climbed into the passenger seat. He held my hand. "We'll do this together," he said softly. I nodded. Together. I started the engine. The headlights cut through the growing dusk. The road was empty. The wind whispered through the trees. Every rustle made me jump. As we drove closer, the mill loomed larger. Its tall roof and broken walls seemed to reach for the sky. The river glittered in the fading light. A wooden sign creaked in the wind. Willow Glen Mill. No one came here anymore. We parked and got out. Michael turned off the car. His hand was cold on mine. I swallowed hard. I took a step toward the mill. The boards on the porch were cracked. The door hung on one hinge. A gust of wind blew through, making the door creak on its own. I felt a chill. This was the moment. The moment to face the people who had stolen my coat, who had taken the will, who had tried to scare me into obedience. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The air smelled of dust and rot. The floorboards groaned under my feet. The fading light from the broken windows barely reached the far corner of the room. Michael stayed close behind me. I held his hand tightly. Then, from the shadows, a voice called out, "Welcome, Megan Walker." I stepped into the dark room, every breath shaking in my chest. The voice rang out again, calm and cold, like ice on my skin. "Welcome, Megan Walker." My heart pounded so loud I thought it would burst right out of my chest. The wind blew through broken windows, carrying dust and the smell of old wood. Michael stood behind me, his hand tight around mine. We were alone, or so we thought, but the sound told me someone watched us from the shadows. "Show yourself," I called, my voice trembling but strong. A figure emerged slowly into the fading light. It was Mr. Harris, our family lawyer. His glasses glinted as he pushed back a lock of gray hair. Behind him stood two tall men in dark jackets. Their faces were hidden in shadows. "You brought the will," Mr. Harris said calmly. "You used it to threaten us. Now we need it back." I felt my blood run cold. "You did this? You set the fire. You threatened me. You stole my coat." Mr. Harris's face stayed calm. "Your parents wanted to protect their legacy. They left everything to Michael. We agreed to help them make sure no one changed their minds." I shook my head. "You burned their house. You put Dad's life at risk." He frowned. "We did what we had to do. You nearly gave everything away when you stopped helping them. They asked us to bring you back in line." I felt tears sting my eyes. "You told me they asked you?" "They said they'd keep me in the will." He stepped closer. "They never lied. They always planned to leave everything to Michael and his descendants. But you kept helping them without any right. They asked us to scare you into stepping away. You forced our hand." I stared at him, my mind reeling. All those nights at the hospital, all those dollars I sent, you used that to trap me. He shrugged. "You had every chance to stop. You did not. You left them nothing. They did what they thought best." Michael stepped forward, his voice low. "You did this to my family. You almost killed my dad. You burned our home. For money." Mr. Harris sighed. "Your parents are old. They wanted to make a clean break. Megan was too kind. We had to push her away so she would stop." I felt my hand shake. I wanted to scream. I wanted to hit him, but I had no strength left. I felt Michael's hand tighten around mine. Suddenly, one of the men stepped forward. He pointed a gun at us. I gasped. My heart slammed in my chest. "Hand over the will," he said, his voice a growl. "Or else." I remembered the envelope in my coat pocket, the one they had taken from my apartment, the one they still held. The will was whole and real. They had the original. They had all the power. I swallowed hard. Michael's face was white, but he did not move. He stood beside me, ready to protect me. I forced a calm voice. "I will give it to you, but you let my family go." Mr. Harris looked at the man with the gun. The man hesitated and lowered his weapon a fraction. "All right," Mr. Harris said. "Give it here." I reached into my pocket and pulled out the envelope. My hand shook so badly I thought I would drop it. I held it out, my arm trembling. The man grabbed it and tore it open. He pulled out the pages and read them quickly by the dim light. His eyes widened. He blinked. Then he looked at Mr. Harris in surprise. "This isn't it," he said, his voice low. "This is a copy. The original is still missing." My breath caught. I stared at them. They looked confused. I realized they had taken my coat, thinking the envelope was in it. But earlier I had switched the real will into my purse. I had pocketed a copy in the coat to trick them. Mr. Harris's face went pale. He looked between the two of us. "You tricked us." I felt a surge of power. Michael released my hand and stepped forward. "You thought you could scare us. You thought you could steal our lives. But you picked the wrong family." The gunman snarled and raised his weapon. Time seemed to slow. I could feel the sweat on my forehead. Michael moved like a flash, grabbing the man's arm and twisting it until he dropped the gun. It clattered on the floor. Mr. Harris tried to run, but Michael kicked a broken chair into his path, sending him sprawling. I ran to the gun and picked it up. I did not know much about guns, but I aimed it at the remaining man. He froze. "Don't move," I said, my voice shaking but firm. "Stay down." He dropped to his knees, his hands raised. I took a step back, my legs weak. Michael grabbed Mr. Harris's jacket and pulled him up. "Call the police," he said, pressing the lawyer's face down to the floor. "Call them now." Mr. Harris fumbled for his phone, but dropped it. Michael kicked it away. The two men lay still, breathing hard. I looked at the door. The wind blew in, carrying the sound of crickets and the rush of the river nearby. Outside was the world. Inside was the world I nearly lost. I walked over to Michael and dropped the gun. I sank to my knees, tears flowing freely. He knelt beside me and put an arm around my shoulders. "It's over," he whispered. I closed my eyes and let the tears fall. "I'm so tired," I said. He held me tight. "I know." We stayed like that for a long minute. Then the sound of sirens came from the distance, growing louder by the second. Michael stood and held out a hand to me. I took it and stood, my legs still shaky. We walked to the door together. Outside, blue and red lights flashed on the old mill. Police officers streamed in, guns drawn, shouting orders. One officer ran up to us. "Are you Megan Walker?" I nodded. My voice was gone. I felt like I lost it all and gained something new at the same time. He took my arm gently. "You're safe now. We'll take statements." I glanced back at Mr. Harris and the two men. They lay on the dusty floor, handcuffed. Justice would come for them. The truth would come out. An officer led Michael away to talk to him too. I watched until they went around a corner. Then I looked at the old mill. The place that nearly destroyed my family now stood quiet. I took a deep breath. The sun had fully set, and the sky was deep blue. I felt Michael's hand on my shoulder. I turned to him. "Thank you," I whispered, "for everything." He smiled softly. "We're family. We look out for each other." I nodded. The words felt right. I looked down at the envelope in my hand. The real will was safe. My parents' wishes would be honored. I would share everything with Michael, just as they wanted. I closed the envelope and tucked it into my coat. I looked up at the mill one last time. The danger was gone. The fire was out. The threat was over. And for the first time in a long time I felt free.